What's up, Internet, and welcome back to Fringe Faith. Today, I wanted to talk about something I find seriously fascinating. I'm going to connect a few dots here of different things that I've been learning about, and I don't know, it's really cool to me, and it speaks to just the intricacies of how the Lord created us and the spiritual realm, and how our bodies were intended to function before the fall, and how our bodies may function once they are glorified. And it's really cool to think about sometimes, even if it is just kind of just pondering and hypothetical. But if you listen to my episode with my friend Anthony Schroeder, we spoke a little bit about lights and their functions and how they affect the human body, right? Blue light exposure for long periods of time is causing issues with human biology, and lack of sunlight is also causing issues with human biology, right? We need the sun in the morning, so like the red light spectrum, no UV, to turn on our circadian processes so that our bodies function properly throughout the day. And then we need a bit of that UV to create vitamin D and to create a solar callus. Now, that sometimes is in the form of a tan, but not everybody tans. But it does help you to create melanin. And even if you have like very white skin, you do create some melanin because your internal organs need it to function, but you may not create enough to tan. But your skin can get used to a certain amount of sun exposure without burning, by being in the sun more often. That doesn't mean that a person that is really um, melanin, like, or lower in melanin, somebody that's like more like very fair toned or whatever, I guess you could call it. I don't know if that's what you actually call it, but it doesn't matter. But people that are really light skinned, they don't need as much sun from what I understand, but they do need some still. Okay. Especially in the morning for the circadian biology. But then there's other people that need more sun more often, especially very dark people with a lot of melanin. They need a lot more sunlight, and a lot of times more than even the sunlight in their part of the sky can give them. So, like people in the higher latitudes, like even in the Midwest and stuff, most people that are really dark, they need more sun than actually is available to them, which is kind of fascinating and a little bit problematic. But there are ways to counteract that, obviously. That's not the part that I want to get into. What I want to get into is that, especially lighter people, but I believe even highly melanated peoples, our bodies have adapted to when we are very cold to let off its own UV light because we need that UV light, right? And a lot of people, I guess, before you argue with me about or skin cancer, you can't get skin cancer from the sun unless you only go into the sun sometimes, because chronic sun exposure gives you vitamin D, and lack of vitamin D is a cause of skin cancer. Okay, so the fact that we don't go outside much and then we go out and get burnt and then we go back inside and we don't come back out for who knows how long, and then eventually, right? So if you're in the sun consistently, the science shows that you won't get skin cancer from the sun. It's a counterintuitive. It's not actually how it happened. The From what I understand, the sciences that claimed that, what they did is they stuck people in just UVB lighting only, and didn't give them full spectrum light. And what ended up happening is they did end up with problems, but it's because they didn't get the benefit of the full spectrum sun. Okay. And if you want more information on all of this stuff, Dr. Alexis Cowan, Dr. Jack Cruz, they both speak about this stuff on podcasts all the time. You can find it. I'm not an expert in it, but I have learned enough to go like, okay, this is super important. This is fascinating. And I've wrapped my head around it enough to regurgitate some of it. As far as the studies and stuff go, you're gonna have to go to them. Honestly, they're the doctorates, they're the experts, but they have incredibly resourceful information about this stuff. And I think that alone should be a podcast down the line. I would love to talk to one of them about this stuff because I think that our value for health should be significantly higher in the church for a multitude of reasons, but we don't need to get into that right now, I don't think. Even though I kind of want to. But as I was trying to get to, our bodies have adapted to when it is really cold, especially in higher elevations, where the sun exposure is lower in the winter. Our bodies create UV, and that allows us to create vitamin D and things even in the winter. The reason that's important is because when you actually go outside and get cold and are doing things, your body creates what it needs to not get so much seasonal depression. Okay. The reason we get seasonal depression today so much actually has to do with the fact that we aren't getting the sun signals that we need, that our biology requires, because we aren't going outside and we're also not getting cold because we're in temperature controlled climates. Our houses, our buildings, all that stuff. We've become so used to sitting in like 70-degree temperature, and we don't go outside more than we have to. Okay, the problem with that is it screws with our biology. We don't get cold enough to signal our body to do what it's designed to do in the winter months. Okay. And then in the summer, because we're inside, we aren't going outside enough to get the sun exposure to trigger our bodies to do what it's supposed to do biologically. Okay. All of this speaks to the chronic issues that we have in culture today that are exponentially higher, right? Dr. Alexis, she claims that she actually believes that most of our chronic illnesses have less to do with food and the irradiation of our environment. Granted, they are massive, that she still agrees they are massive problems, but they are the secondary problems to a primary problem of our sun environment, our lack of cold environment, our uh, all of that. Basically, our comforts. Our comforts are killing us, is essentially what I'm saying here. But also not the point I want to get to. However, I think it's important to realize that like our biology was set up in such a way that it can create UV light when it's cold. Okay. Now, when we were quote unquote perfect in the Garden of Eden, maybe it's possible that we had access to biological processes that we don't now. That's highly probable. I mean, there's a lot of belief and speculation that even our in our brains there are things that could function then that don't now. And talking to my friends that see in the spirit or things like that, a lot of times it seems that it's possibly a biological process that most of us have lost, okay, to be able to see things in a spectrum of light that is beyond our current ability to see, right? That's why some people can see it, some people can't, because they have those genes maybe turned on. Maybe. It's not necessarily how it is, but that's a probable cause as to how it happens. And so, all of that is obviously speculation, but there is science that suggests it's possible that that is the case, right? Where this got super interesting for me, however, was I was listening to a podcast with a man named Russ Brialt, I believe is how you pronounce it, and he is an expert on the Shroud of Turin. Okay. I never knew a lot about the Shroud of Turin before. I just knew that it was just a garment that people believed was on that was the burial garment for Jesus, right? And if you didn't know that, well, now you do. It's I believe kept by the Catholic Church, if I remember correctly, and is, you can't just access it anymore. And at one point, they did scientific studies on it. I think they've wanted to further do studies on it, but they haven't been able to because obviously it's a artifact of the Vatican, if I remember correctly, and they don't want to risk damaging it, obviously. Um, and it's sacred to them, so obviously makes sense. But when they did do the scientific experiments on it, one of the things that was fascinating was that there's the bloodstain marks. Okay. These marks are basically, blood being saturated into the fibers. Okay. Obvious, we would expect that. One of the things that makes this garment potentially uh, verified as the garment that Jesus did have when he was buried is that there are these other discrepancies in the fibers that aren't natural. I guess not natural is hyperbole, isn't the right word, but they wouldn't be there without an exterior or an exterior catalyst. What he claims happened, what they found scientifically, was that there are these marks that are clearly blood stains. Okay. And then there's these other changes in the fiber that could only have happened because of UV exposure. Okay. Where the blood was, okay, the blood actually protected the fibers from the UV exposure. Okay. So what that basically means is this thing was saturated in blood in certain areas. Okay. Then a UV blast hit these fibers. And the way they explain it is that it would have been a high intensity blast of UV radiation, like fast, like a sort of like a photo, effectively onto a like when old photography, like how film photography works, when you blast it with light, it automatically just sears into the film, the image in which it captured. Okay, it's the same process essentially, is that UV light just blasted the fibers. Okay, but where the blood stains were, the blood blocked the UV from hitting the fibers. Okay, so that means that it was after the blood was on it, this UV light just flashed. And the idea is that when Jesus' spirit came back into his body, he flashed in radiance. And maybe it was his quote unquote glorified body and it like had its supernatural change. Okay. Or maybe it's just that when the spirit re-enters the body, there's this flash of UV that happens. It's a biological process. I don't know. But the fact that it suggests that the moment that Jesus came back, he flashed UV, and we know about this biological process that happens in normal humans, where we create a low grade UV in the wintertime when we are cold so that our biology works properly. Like, I don't have a pretty bow to wrap on this. Okay. It's not like I'm going, hey, here's this thing, and this is definitely what it means. But it definitely speaks to like something about the spirit, about the glorified bodies, possibly. It speaks to the original intent of God's design of our bodies before the fall. And like I said, I don't have a neat bow to wrap around it, but this was mind blowing to me. I just, I don't know. My spirit was like, there's something so significant about this, and maybe it's just something to be like wondered at in awe. Like, whoa, there's this correlation that seems really important, and I don't know what it means necessarily, but I just thought it was cool enough to share. Um, and if that's all that comes of it is just this cool thing, so be it. But maybe somebody that is scientifically minded may be able to connect the dots and like come up with some sort of hypothesis about it that is more substantial and concrete. I don't know. Um, but I don't know. I just remember listening to the man talk about it. And if you want to listen to it, I believe it was a Blurry Creatures episode. It might have been a members episode though, so you might have to do a do a month uh, of subscribing or something to listen to it, if I remember correctly. But I'm sure that the man talks about it elsewhere. So if you look up Brialt, I'll put his name in the description so that you know how to spell it, because it doesn't look like how it sounds. And yeah, it would be a fun rabbit hole to go down. If I knew the science processes better, if I grasped them better, I would probably create a theory of my own, but I don't have one. I just remember hearing it and my spirit was like, this is important. I don't know. Anyways, it's just fun. Something that I learned about recently that I wanted to share. So hopefully you think it's as cool as I do, and I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.